talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
Big 550 ATRS. Hello to all of you out there listening in the greater St. Louis metro listening area. If you're streaming us on YouTube and Facebook, hello to all of you. Thank you very much for watching us online. If you're streaming us on the KTRS app or on the website, we appreciate you finding us there and tuning in. And as always, if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast form, we do appreciate you hearing and listening to us there as well. We're starting a brand new segment tonight. We're kind of mixing it up a little bit. Our friend Lewis at Comic Book Nostalgia is going to be doing a brief nerd news segment. We're going to call it the Comic Book Nostalgia News, and it goes a little something like this.
Thanks, James. Hey, this is Comic Book Nostalgia, and we have our weekly superhero update. Well, it's been a pretty big week in superhero news, so we're going to kick it all off with something from Marvel Television. Disney did their upfront presentation, and at the presentation, we got big reveals for 3 of their upcoming shows. We got a title confirmation and release date for Agatha. Turns out this show is going to be called Agatha All Along, and it's going to come our way on September the 18th. They also gave us a minor teaser, which they've dropped on social media, and the show will indeed be part of our Halloween season. Now, along with that, we got a new logo for Daredevil and a release window for that show as well. It's actually going to come our way in March of 2025, but no specific date was given as of yet. Along with Daredevil, we found out Ironheart will be Marvel's second big show of 2025, and if you guys remember correctly, Bob Iger said we're going to get 2 a year, so that probably fills up that schedule. Now, right beside Marvel's MCU is Sony's Spider-Verse, and has been a busy week over there also. Sony has several Spider-Man related shows coming to Amazon, and early in the week, we found out that Nicolas Cage will indeed take up the role of Spider-Man Noir in the upcoming series. He voiced the character in the animated film Across the Spider-Verse, and has been the fan pick since the show was announced. Now, sadly, there was some bad news on that front also, because Silk Spider Society was also set to bring Cindy Moon to life over on Amazon Prime, but that show has been canceled. There's no official reason for its cancellation, but multiple trades did report there were some behind-the-scenes development issues that ultimately led to Lord and Miller capping the show. Now, on the other side of the comic book divide, the DCU has also had a pretty big week. Creature Commandos revealed a new logo, but most importantly, they're going to be front and center at the upcoming Annecy Animation Festival. We're going to see some of the creative team show up and break down the upcoming series, and it will give fans their very first look at the first entry into the DCU. Now, we all know Superman is currently in production, but Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is right around the corner, and we got a release date and a director for the upcoming project. It turns out rumors were confirmed, and Cruella and I, Tonya filmmaker Craig Gillespie is set to helm the upcoming DC Studios production. Now, the film will be coming our way on June the 26th, 2026, just about 11 months after the release of James Gunn's Superman reboot, and as of right now is set to be the second theatrical entry in the new DC universe. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Make sure you check us out over on our YouTube channel. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, try to bring it to you all truthfully and transparently so we can make sure you're really in the know. Back to you, James.
Thank you, Lewis. Comic Book Nostalgia at CB Nostalgia on Twitter. If you check him out, he's always got really cool updates. And of course, as he mentioned on YouTube for more stuff like that. I know Lewis was very excited that I had my next guest on the air with me today. As we mentioned in the intro, Matthew Waterson, fresh back from a con. Thank you for doing the show on a Sunday night. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill to. It's always a thrill to get to talk about this stuff.
I looked through my entire closet. I could not find. I know I've got 2 X-Men shirts. I had to do Captain America since he did show up in your show, so I figured I'd at least try to represent a little bit.
Yeah, no, he was in there. He wasn't as helpful as he might have been, but he was in there.
Yeah, and nice little conflict with Rogue. It was a great. So I'm going to let everyone know right now, we might do some mild spoilers if you're listening, because obviously the finale just dropped this past Wednesday, I believe. So all the episodes are out. So if you haven't seen it, this is on you, friends. That's all I can say. Let's go ahead and jump right into the obvious questions. How did it feel taking on the master of magnetism? Those are some big shoes to fill.
They really were. I mean, David Hemblen, who voiced him in the original series, did such an amazing job and created this character that was such a part of so many people's childhoods that stepping in and taking over for him was not a small task. And so a lot of it was, fortunately, my voice and his voice are somewhat similar, which kind of helped. But a lot of it was, just trusting in the director and the producers and the writers, that when they said, okay, yeah, you've got it, that just trusting their ear that it actually had it, especially because we spent, we started working on, I think I booked it at the end of 2021.
Oh, wow.
Started working on early 2022. So we were doing it in a bubble for a long time. And so there wasn't, it was only the people who were involved. And it's sometimes tough to tell in that situation. Are we crazy or are we doing this well? You don't know until it goes out. And then you go, we think we're good. We think we did okay. Do people like it or not? Or do they go, no, you guys were off in your bubble and you somehow missed the mark completely and then just kept going in the wrong direction. So it's been really nice to have it be out now and have people actually be able to sort of come up and say, no, it worked great for me. We're enjoying it. So that's been amazing.
How long do you remember approximately from the time you finished recording the last episode to the release date? Do you remember the amount of time that span in between?
It was a long time. Like, it's tough to remember because we've been into recording season 2 for a while.
Okay.
I think we've actually finished the body of recording of season 2. We've still got, pickups and ADR and all that kind of stuff. But it was a while ago. It was, I think they were still tweaking stuff, but the actual, the main brunt of the work, I've got to say, was finished probably at least a year ago in terms of my work, in terms of, the voice stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in animation that comes after that. But I think the last time I recorded anything for it was over a year ago for season 1.
And I love it. If you look through our body of work, and all my listeners will know this, I'd say 50% of the people I have on the show are voice actors because I just absolutely adore what all of you do. And it's an incredible gift that you're able to do and put these series out there. And I know we've had the entire cast of the Justice League animated series on the show, and they've always talked about how they recorded in the studio. They could look right across the glass and see the other people. And I know COVID changed a lot of that. So for season 1 or season 2, were you in the booth with any of the other actors? Is this kind of post-COVID and you're on your own?
I have done every single season in this booth that I'm sitting right next to at the moment. That is at home. And you mentioned that, my wife Rachel, who voiced, you can see a reflection of it somewhere around here. There's a Justice League poster you can see a reflection of. She did Justice League Action. She was Wonder Woman in it, and they recorded that. They were recording that 7 years ago, and they recorded that in a room. And so they had Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill and all these people, Diedrich Bader, in the room there while they were doing it. And so, they were able to sort of bounce stuff off. We did a couple of sessions over Zoom. Like, I did a session with Lenore for Magneto and Rogue over Zoom, just so that we could actually see and hear each other for once. But almost apart from that, I think everything else that I did just about was just done in the booth solo. And it's having to trust the producers and the voice director Meredith, when she says, this is how this is going to play, this is what it's going to sound like, and you go, okay, and you just react off that. And sometimes they say, that makes a lot of sense, you have to do it differently for reasons, and you just have to say, okay, I trust you. And then, know that they have in their head and they've heard either what they're going to have the other person do or what the other person did do. And so they're giving you the stuff that you need to actually get the right response. Because it is a big difference not having the cast in a room together so we can bounce off of each other.
Absolutely. So is there an initial, for each episode, is there at least a Zoom table read, or that's you get one thing with the cast and that's everything else is on your own, period?
It's all on your own.
Wow.
I did the last series that I did, which was the Croods for DreamWorks. That one, we did the table read at DreamWorks in January of 2020, and the week we were supposed to start records, and that was basically a sitcom, so that was going to be everybody in a room at DreamWorks. That the week we were supposed to start records was when everything shut down, and so for the first 2 or 3 episodes, they tried to do the records as everybody on Zoom. And it helped to kind of build a little bit of build the repartee among the cast, but it just became really, really difficult to have even 6 or 7 people, let alone in our show where frequently we have 8, 9, 10 cast members, like the lag on Zoom and stuff like that, it just makes it really, really difficult to get the timing and things like that.
So I guess a lot of the times now, the times you're seeing your fellow X-Men actors are at these conventions like the one you just came home from.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time I met most of the cast was at the premiere.
Oh, okay.
I like one or two of them were people who I'd known beforehand, like AJ Locasio, who plays Gambit now. He's a friend of mine and we've done a bunch of stuff together, so I knew him. But apart from that, I had not met most of the cast until then. And it wasn't even like, I live about 60 miles outside of Los Angeles. And it was in the lead up to the premiere that actually Ray Chase, who's Cyclops, and I realized we live like 6 minutes from each other.
Oh, wow.
Way out of town. And we didn't know. We've been doing the thing for 2 years and we didn't realize that we live right by each other, 60 miles north of LA, because none of us had really interacted.
So is that now that you know he's Rap of the Road, you say, hey, you come over to my booth this time, we'll come over to yours next time, and we'll record our stuff together?
Well, by the time we sort of found out it was done, and as you see going into season 2, at least in the beginning, we're in different places.
Yeah, that's an interesting, man. I got to say, I'm not sure. I'll go ahead and ask, how big of a comic book fan were you before booking this part?
So I was like, I grew up in the UK, and I was in boarding school there, so I wasn't able to watch the show when it originally aired. I couldn't watch it every Saturday morning because I was effectively locked in a Victorian children's prison, which I loved. I liked my school, but that, we didn't have access to that. So most of my exposure to X-Men, at least, came originally through the movies. And then afterwards, that was when I could first kind of get a cohesive impression of what it was. And then I sort of started getting into comics afterwards, but I was never like deep in it. My wife actually is way more into it. We have a whole bunch of graphic novels and big compendiums of comics and things, and those all came from, like, she brought all those into the marriage. She had all of that stuff, and so I had, once that was in the house, I started going through and reading a lot of that. But I was not immersed in it as a kid in the way that some of the other people were. So it's been kind of great because it's meant that I got to explore it all now as an adult. Like, part of my homework for the show was watching the original 5 seasons of X-Men, which is a really cool homework.
Yeah, I'd say, man. And then, like, as a comic book fan, like, each episode I'm posting comic book covers from the Chris Claremont run, from the stuff, it's taken right out of the Jim Lee stuff when you, again, spoilers if you haven't seen the whole thing, where you pull the adamantium out of Wolverine. That's right out of that X-Men 25 with the holographic cover. So I'm like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Every time I see something, I'm like, oh, flicking my fingers at the that's me. Like, the entire run of this show, it's been so great that there was such love put into this. Obviously, the people who made it were comic book fans, and I think that translated so well to the product we got.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things. The showrunner, and this has been out, but one of the things he said is he wanted everybody involved in it to be a fan of the show. And so whether they were people who had been, lifelong fans, or whether they're people, like me, who'd sort of come to a little later and found it, like, everybody who got into it and was a part of it, like, loves all of the material and all the canon. And, like, once they told me, what sort of episode 2 was pulled on, like the trial of Magneto and the costume that he was going to have for the first season, I went out and got, issue 200 that has that on it and all that stuff. It was a moment of going like, oh, that's great, I got to get that. And then I had the thought of, I really hope that's not one of those rare comic books that's like $1,500. And unfortunately it's not. I did have it at a convention a couple of weeks ago. Somebody brought me a comic book to sign and handed it to me, and I signed it. And then the guy next to me said, that's an expensive comic book. And the guy said, yeah, it's a $2,000 comic book. And I went, I'm really glad you didn't tell me that before I started writing on it, because I guaranteed I would have spelled my name wrong or something or other on it.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's it. And I was talking to somebody about that today, how there's this weird thing of taking over a role like this, where somebody hands something like that to you, or even like I had the one you just mentioned, the holographic cover with the pulling the adamantium out of Wolverine. I signed one of those today. And there's a part of me that feels like it's weird that I shouldn't be writing on these books, or like, why am I writing on this book? Like, I'm going to mess it up for the person. Right. And there's this weird sort of mentality shift where it's like, no, you are one of the people now who has voiced this character. And so there is a reason for you to sign it. And there, that people want to have your signature on it, which is, it's a weird thing to get your head around.
Yeah. And it looks like, is that a Magneto helmet I'm seeing there over your left shoulder?
Yes, yeah. This is one of the ones that came from. I've signed a whole bunch of these at conventions, but yeah, this is one of the ones that is actually part of the show was released with the show, and is cool because like it's even got patterning on the inside, like on the inside of the helmet on the top of it, and so it's a very cool one. They have cushions to like size it to yourself, which I have not done yet because at the moment it doesn't fit me properly. So when I put it on, I look like an extra from the Mines of Moria from Lord of the Rings. It doesn't quite have the right effect.
Right.
But it's that's been one of the really fun things is they've had some really good merchandise that has come out with the show. So there's great action figures that I have a couple that I've kept in boxes in their original packaging, and then I have a couple that I open for my kids. And so I'll come into the living room, and one of my kids will just be like slamming Magneto's head into a shelf, and I'm sort of looking at it going, that is paying for your life, and they're like, I'm just going to keep beating it on a stick. But it's kind of fun. They know that it's me, but they kind of it's a little like to like the 2-year-old, it's still a little kind of fuzzy as to what that actually means.
And I'm not trying to get personal, but is the 2-year-old your oldest child, or are there other ones?
Youngest.
Okay. So your other kids, are they kind of like, hey, my dad's Magneto, or is this one of the things it's like, yeah, it's another day at the office because my dad has done all this voice work?
This is not a show that we let them watch. They're not sort of an age where I feel like it's totally appropriate. They have watched some of like the last thing I did, the Crudes, and they've watched some of Troll Hunters, but that gets a little heavy too. So, but Crudes they all really, really enjoy because that's like a slapstick sort of sitcom. So that's one that they do watch and they really enjoy. And it was interesting to watch the shift in the oldest and now the middle one as they sort of put together like, oh, okay, now I'm kind of starting to get what it is that mom and dad do. Because at first it didn't make sense to them.
Yeah, and Yuri Lowenthal obviously is married to another voice actor. I guess I would think, and as again a layman, that's kind of helpful because it's like, yeah, my spouse perfectly understands what I do for a living and she gets what we're doing, and vice versa. Does that make it easier? I don't want to say that it's that simple, but does it take some of the pressure off having a spouse who is in the same line of work and knows what it is you do and what you need to do?
I think so. Yeah. It's like, it means that there's a shorthand and you don't have to sort of like, there's weird stuff that's part of this job. Like doing conventions is weird. Yeah. Doing sort of interviews and things. It's a weird thing that most professions don't have as a part of it. And so sometimes having to explain to somebody the point of like why you need to do things. And sometimes there's stuff that you don't really want to do that's part of the job that you kind of have to do, but having to explain why you have to do something that doesn't seem to be part of the actual acting job, it can be kind of difficult or it can seem absurd. And so having somebody who understands that intimately is helpful because there's no question about that sort of stuff. It does mean that both of you, and my wife and I talk about this, like both of us ended up choosing somebody who has a very sort of peripatetic profession. It's like we're nobody has like a job that's like, no, you're locked in and this is your salary and you get a raise every year or two and sort of, so you can base it off that. We're both sort of at the mercy of what we have to be working at any given time. So it makes for an exciting life.
And congratulations too on all the accolades. I mean, I think this has already been nominated for a few awards, the series X-Men 97. It's obviously greenlit. I know you guys are recording season 2, but I thought I saw some more, but it's actually been greenlit for a 3rd season as well already.
Yes, it has. So Brad Winterbaum, the sort of head of streaming for Marvel, had like right around when they released, or right before we released the first episode, said, no, we've actually, we're into a 2nd season already. And then a couple weeks after the premiere, he said, no, we're officially ordering a 3rd season. Great. So we know we're going to do 3 at least. And obviously I think most of us would be happy to keep doing this for the next 25 years. I would ideally be happy that I die still doing this job and somebody else gets to take over from me. That would kind of be ideal.
Yeah. I mean, the original one went for 5 seasons, so we can at least hope for 5 total, right? If nothing else.
That'd be great. We, one of the nice things is, doing when you go to conventions, I've only still done a couple of them, but having people sort of say, hey, we'd like it to keep going. And so that's awesome to hear because all of us doing it, love doing it. We have an absolute blast. And so we would love to keep doing it. So that's, we'll hopefully manage to keep making it and keep making it well and get to keep doing it for as long as we can.
It's such a rare thing to see because obviously with anything, and people's opinions on the internet, people seem to like to fight. They want to be divided about everything. The Last Jedi is the greatest movie ever. The Last Jedi is the worst Star Wars movie ever. People like Star Trek. They don't like Doctor Who's this, Doctor Who's that. But I have never seen a new project come out like X-Men 97 where the praise has been, from what I've seen, universally good. I've not really seen any naysayers or people picking things apart. I think it fires on all cylinders with, you've got a great cast doing the voices. It's straight out of the comic books. The showrunners know their stuff. They've got the original showrunners like Eric and Julia as consultors and Larry Houston and everything. So it's shocking to see in the days of the internet and Twitter that no one's fighting over X-Men 97. Everyone universally loves it, which again has to be a great feeling for you.
It is, yeah, and it's been fun because like the vitriol or the frustration that I've got has been like after episode 5 and then after sort of episode 7 was people going like, well, when is Gambit? Is Gambit going to come back? Why do you get to come back? And I'm sort of going, I don't have anything to do with that. I just read the stuff they give me. And so when the thing that people are actually getting upset about is part of the storytelling, you go, that's great. You can be mad at us about that because that means that you're invested in it. And it's strange because there's almost nothing that you do that is universally liked. And when you come into something like this, anytime you take over something or you revive something or like I voiced the Doomslayer for the Doom franchise, and it was the first time he'd had a voice. And you go into it and you're like, in an ideal world, a third of the people like me, a third of the people are indifferent, and only a third of the people start screaming that you destroyed their childhood and the history of their enjoyment of this IP. And that was kind of in my head what I was coming in on this. I was just hoping that a third of people liked it and a third of people were indifferent. And so anything above that is brilliant. And so it's been really, really lovely to get to sort of see that and to actually get to talk to people and hear people tell us what the parts of it that connected with them and that they felt, meant something to them, and how like they'll see like something that was in the original show or something that was in the comics and part of the X-Men canon that was pulled out and was put in, and they say that bit meant a lot to me when I read it in the comics, and getting to see it realized in like a mass media form means a lot to me is really, really nice.
Yeah. And if you're just now tuning in, we're chatting with Matthew Waterson about X-Men 97. A lot of other stuff to chat about. And speaking of chat, as I do every week, I always neglect the chats. I'm sorry. We have My Flock says, hello, everyone. Hello to you, My Flock. Chance from Atlanta, Georgia, listening. The Nostalgic Pod Blast. Great show. I just watched him do a bunch of comic book reveals today. So if you get a chance if you're listening right now and you're looking for something new to check out, the Nostalgic Pod Blast is one I'd recommend. Mark Child says, hello, listening to us. So I think that, yep, I just want to make sure I caught up on everybody and leave everyone behind. If you have a question, if you're listening right now and you have a question for Matthew, you can text us at the KTRS text lines at 84126. Again, it's just a text line, so leave your name and what part of town you're from, and I'll read those off. Or if you're joining us in the video on Facebook and YouTube, you can leave a chat right there, and I'll try to pay better attention to it. I apologize in advance. We're going to take a very brief commercial break. How can I keep you for the whole hour? Is that okay?
Probably. What time is it? It's 7. Yeah, we can probably
another 20, 30 minutes.
I can probably do that unless I get an emergency message saying the children are running rampant and I got to go. So, but
understood.
But until I get that, then you're good to go.
Okay, we'll play it by ear then. Hopefully we can keep you. Otherwise, if you got to go, you got to go, and I understand. So yeah, we were talking with Matthew Waterson. If you're listening right now, we will be right back. Listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Oh, stop! I've got Steel Heart and Razor. No way. I'll still win. Never.
Steel Will with Stronghold, Monstar with Sky Shadow, and other figures with Weapon Bird sold separately. Silverhawks, new from Kenner.
Only one man is tough enough to stop the evil outlaw Tex-Hex. He's Brave Star. Neutral laser and laser fire figures sold separately.
You're a buster, Tex-Hex. My laser fire backpack makes me unstoppable. Your history, Brave Star. Never. Think you're tough enough for my neutral laser cannon? Watch this. Ah! What happened? Laser fire.
Neutral laser, laser fire, Brave Star, and Tex-Hex. Each sold separately, batteries not included. You from Mattel.
He-Man in a time warp.
Where am I?
Ancient pre-Eternia, lost land of the dinosaurs. Thunderous Tyrannosaurus Rex battles mighty Bionatops, ferocious dinosaurs.
Take this, He-Man.
How can He-Man survive? New from the Masters of the Universe, figures Bionatops, Tyrannosaurus Rex, and Turbodactyl each sold separately. Get
Hi there, sugar. This is Lenore Zan, Rogue, and I am coming to you from Geek to Me Radio.
Had to come back from the commercial break with Lenore Zan on that one. The voice of Rogue in X-Men, the original series, and in the new 97 series as well. We make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. You know by the website discoverstcharles.com. Whether you are here locally, maybe you're in Alton on the other side of the river, maybe you're in Chesterfield down south, maybe you just haven't been to St. Charles lately. What are you waiting for? The weather's getting nicer. Go over there, rent a bike ride the Katy Trail, take your dog, throw the Frisbee around in Frontier Park. If you're just looking for some food, all those restaurants there along North and South Main Street that you haven't tried yet, like Margo, if you want some tacos and margaritas for Taco Tuesday, you want some barbecue, they have Salt and Smoke right there in the 500 block of South Main. Every place down there, I love it because it's all small businesses, whether it's the shops or the restaurants, and they're locally owned and run. If you're wanting to support small businesses, head over to St. Charles. So whether you're local here or you're on the coast like our friend Matthew, check them out. Plan your trip by starting at the website, discoverstcharles.com. There's always something going on down there, whether it's one of their big festivals like Christmas Tradition celebrating its 50th anniversary this coming December, which is amazing to think, or it's their new festivals like Once Upon a Valentine's Day, where you can write sonnets with Romeo and Juliet and talk to the wives of King Henry, disgruntled as they might be. It's still a fun interaction and a great time is had by all. Gorgeous place, especially, like I said, in the springtime, there's just no better time to go down there. Check them out. The City of St. Charles, Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. Once again, the website, discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Chatting with Matthew Waterson. We had a question come in from Emily Stowinski. I have 1,000,001 questions. Arguably, Matthew, you have spent much time with such a deep layered, utterly fascinating character. Therefore, my question is, what intrigues you most about the character of Magneto?
Well, one of the things, and I've talked about this with, I got to talk about this with a bunch of people this weekend, and also I got to talk about it with Ross Marquand, who plays Xavier, is one of the things that I find really fascinating about Eric Magneto and about Xavier is Magneto is a villain, quote unquote, but he has the exact same aim as the heroes, which is he's just trying to protect the vulnerable. He's not trying to make himself rich. He's not trying to make himself powerful. He's not trying to rule the world. If everybody left mutants alone, he would run an Airbnb or, teach at a school or run a mechanic shop or something or other like that. He's not out to try and gain anything for himself. And he could live quietly on his own if he wanted, and no one is going to mess with him. It's purely a case of I saw people coming after my people when I was a child, and I couldn't do anything about it. Now I'm one of the few people on the planet who single-handedly pretty much is powerful enough to protect an entire group. It's my job to do that. So given that his aim is to protect the vulnerable, that's no different from any hero. And then the difference between him and Charles is that Charles can look into people's heads and see good in them. So Charles can look at somebody who's being horrible to mutants and say, but there's good in there. And we just need to get to that and get away from whatever is making them do these horrible things. And Magneto looks at it and goes, it doesn't matter. There may be good in there, but that's not what's coming out. The bad is stronger than the good. And my entire life history has told me that I can't continue to wait for the good to come out in case it comes out. So it's what's so fascinating is they both want the same thing. And they even don't necessarily massively disagree about how to go about it. Where the disagreement comes out of is that Xavier, because he can read into what people are thinking, there's something there for him to grasp onto to still say, no, this might be salvageable. And for Eric, there isn't. He's like, I have too much experience. There's nothing there. So having somebody who is in a way so selfless, but is as a result of being selfless, being seen as the villain it's a really fascinating thing to play with. And is also one of the reasons why he's in a lot of ways, he's kind of easy is not the right word, but he's straightforward to play because it's what he wants is so clear and is so pure that it's easy to commit to that.
Great answer. Emily, hopefully that answered your question. Bill Blanky, listening in St. Louis, said, I would stay at Magneto's Airbnb. So maybe if the voice acting thing, if you and your wife decide to retire, you can just get the helmet to fit and open up a B&B. There you go.
Yeah. Well, Airbnb actually have Xavier's school up in, I think, New Jersey as like a special release thing that has just become available, where you can go and it's all designed like the 2D show. So you can go and stay in Jubilee's room or whoever's room and stuff like that. And the whole thing is set up like the actual mansion as like an experience.
I saw someone post that and I was like, my gosh, they're really, I mean, what a time to be an X-Man fan. That's all I have to say. We've got Jerry Stokes. Good show so far. Thank you, Jerry. I assume that means you don't think I'll stick the landing on this one, but thank you for listening nonetheless. Shelly Manila says, great interview. Thank you, Shelly, for listening. And follow up to Emily. She says, yes, Magneto operating from that same goal of peace. It's timeless. I mean, this is a story that was written in the 1960s by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby about the X-Men, and we're seeing stuff nowadays. We're like, yeah, it's two sides of the same coin. I found it so interesting that after that episode where I say you didn't do the thing, but Magneto did that EMP thing throughout the world at the North Pole. The hashtag Magneto was right is trending. So it's so weird to see. I mean, it's still reflective of modern society in so many ways. I think that's what makes this X-Men such a timeless tale.
Yeah, the writers of it have done such a good job of keeping it in the time it existed and also making it relevant to any number of current situations and events. And part of that is that they have this massive trove of canon to pull from, so they can find the bits and pieces of stories that speak to what is happening at the moment, and weave and they've been so good at weaving all of that in that it does feel incredibly current day, even though it takes place 25 years ago, and it still speaks to the things that are happening current day, even though it's 25 years ago. So they have an amazing encyclopedia of material to pull from, and they've done it so well.
Yeah, and it's the animation's beautiful too. That's one of the things I was struck by. Is I know we had Larry Houston on the show a couple of years ago, talked about they had to farm out some of the animation, and in the later seasons the budget went down, so it didn't look as good. The animation is stunning. I mean, when you voice this project, then you go back and watch it and see it, all the elements put together. What were your thoughts?
Well, and that was the amazing thing because of the way the pipeline works. The majority of the recording is in the booth to no visuals. There's no pictures or anything to it. And it's usually not until you get to doing pickups or really ADR that you start to see bits of it. And even then, a lot of it is unfinished because the animation is being tweaked so far down that you'll get wireframe or you'll get, unfinished stuff, or there'll be some animation and then there'll be sort of sketches that are literally sort of pasted in there as placeholders so you can see kind of what's happening. And so really the first time I got to see the whole thing put together cohesively was at the premiere. And so that was the first time I got to see the show in terms of its look, and that I got to see most of the other people's performances. So that was amazing because getting to sort of sit down and see 3 episodes at a movie theater on a big screen where you could really see the colors and the vibrancy and how they got the motion and how they, obviously it's done on computers, but it's still done as a 2D animation, so it doesn't look exactly like the old show, but it's cleaner, it's brighter, it's more vivid, and the way that they managed to update it while still keeping it feeling cohesive to and consistent with the original show was just amazing. And it's a nice thing because you're playing in your own little sandbox and you don't know what everyone else is doing. You assume everything is awesome, but you don't know until you actually get to see it. And then when you actually get to see it and get to see sort of the first 3 episodes back to back to back in a giant movie theater with all the other people who helped make it, it's amazing because you get to go, oh, wow, they're really good. I better step up my game as we go along because it turns out they're all really, really good.
Yeah, it's actually it's such a striking thing. And now that I like the weekly release format, because again, I'm old, so that's how I used to watch TV. Was you'd have to wait each week for a new episode. So it's been, I enjoy that little bit of suspense. Otherwise, you blow through it, and then you feel like, oh, no, I'm sad. So I like the limited release. I wanted to ask you because IMDb gets it wrong sometimes. So I always like to ask this question: your first job, according to IMDb, was on a little TV show called Benson.
Yeah.
Did you remember much of that? Did you get to work directly with Robert Guillaume on that at all?
I did. So that came about as a result of my father. So my father was the executive in charge of production of a company called Whit Thomas, who did Soap and Benson and Golden Girls and It's a Living and Beauty and the Beast
wow.
and John Larroquette and Blossom and Dead Poet Society and a whole bunch of stuff. And so I had been pestering that I wanted to do one of the shows. And so as far as I know it, the story happened at one point. They had this episode where Halley's Comet was coming, was when Halley's Comet was passing Earth. And they said, we're going to do an episode where they think that Halley's Comet has come too close to Earth and it's obliterated everybody on the planet except for Bob Guillaume and Inga Svensson. And then they have to repopulate the Earth. And so we're going to need to jump forward and we need kids. So does anybody have a kid who's been bothering them to be in a show? And my dad and Bob Guillaume and one of the other writers went, yep, us. So they got the three of us, and then they hired one actual professional actor to be the other son and said, great. That's where all of you are going to be able to wipe out this badgering from your kids in one fell swoop. So that was who the four kids were. And it was, an episode where at one point the two girls come in, and because they're the last people on Earth, these girls are wearing all this, they're dripping in fake diamonds and furs and everything, because they're just going to Beverly Hills or wherever they're going to and stealing everything. Or not stealing, because there's no one there to take it from. Right, and like when the boys come out, they're playing with train sets, but their train set is Amtrak. They're just like crashing full-size trains, because who else is going to care? So yeah, it was actually, we got to the scenes were with Bob Guillaume and Inga, who were both Inga and her husband were pretty good friends with my parents, and Bob was, they knew decently. So it was kind of nice, because to me, I vaguely knew them, even though I was, I don't know, 4 or 5. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I got a week off school to go and do this episode of Benson. And then I was done, and my parents said, "Great, now you're done. You don't get to stop asking. No more acting. You're done."
Had they known, that would lead to more. I mean, the stuff you've done too, all the cool video games. I mean, you got to be a couple of different characters in Star Wars. Obviously, most recently, the huge Star Wars Jedi Survivor. There was a big role in that. Is that another thing where you're doing the motion capture and you're in a booth by yourself? I know Kevin Conroy once said sometimes doing those video games is like getting a root canal, because you're just, okay, give this line again, but with a wry smile. And it's right. Just all the minutia. Did you find it a good experience?
So I love doing video games. Now, what in the Star Wars game, in that most recent one, what I was actually working on the previs team. So what happens is some of the games, the Star Wars one or God of War, are the most recent examples. They're in their cutscenes. They're sort of cinematic scenes. The way that, especially God of War, for example, is there's no cuts, there's no camera cuts. It's all one fluid camera movement. So that logistically, that's really complicated to put together. And that's really difficult to figure out what those camera movements are going to be when you have the entire cast and a full performance capture crew running, because that's hundreds of thousands of dollars a day or whatever it is. So what they do is they put together a previs team where they get actors to stand in for those, and they get a much smaller team to just come in like week after week or every couple of weeks in a month for years. Like we would work on those. Like we were working on God of War for like 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And Star Wars for like a year and a half or something. And it was coming in and working out the moves, like working out and working with the visual director, like how the characters are literally going to move in the scene so that the camera can move around them, and so that the camera will be able to see everything it needs to see, and it will look natural. So we spend ages doing all that, so that then when the time comes for full shoot days with the cast who are playing the roles, they can just say, great, these are the moves, these are the movements, watch this, we can mark it. And then you can do it on top of it, and then you're going from there. So like in God of War, like I was doing, and this was the first time I actually got to meet AJ Lacazia, who plays Gambit, in person. I was doing all of Kratos' previs, and he was doing all of Atreus' previs. So he was my son for a few years there. And then when we got to Star Wars, he was doing Cal's, and I was doing Bode, I think. So it sort of swaps around based on sort of actual physical size and who fits it better. But so in those two games particularly, it was all previous, which is great. It's the closest thing to when you used to play like cops and robbers as a kid, because you're in a big open space and you're wearing these absurd outfits and everything has to be in your mind. It's all pretend.
Yeah. And it's as I think I'd be perfect for that, because my entire life is pretend. So, it's just the way things are. so many different things. I need to take one more commercial break, and then we're gonna come back and wrap everything up. And I'm hopefully everything's good on your end with the kids.
Seems to be. I haven't got any desperate pleas for help, so far so good.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna take a very quick commercial break. Then we're gonna come right back. We'll chat more with Matthew Waterson for the rest of the hour. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Enter the world of Voltron, where thrilling adventures let you soar beyond the limits of your imagination. Where the valiant Voltron force merges together in their robonic lions to challenge the might of King Zarkon's demonic minions and menacing machines. You can join this never-ending battle between the army of evil and the champions of justice, with the fate of planet Aris and the entire universe at stake. Voltron action figures, lions, and vehicles, each sold separately from Panache Place.
Cobra can run, but he can't hide. The G.I. Joe Crusader's hot on his trail. Nobody beats G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe Crusader.
Passes. Hey, this is Yuri Lowenthal, but you may know me recently as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Welcome back. Geek to Me Radio, heard here every Sunday night in the Big 550 KTRS. I'm your host, James Enstell. I want to make sure we tell you about our official comic book sponsor, Bugs Comics and Games. If you are wanting to get out and get some of these comics like X-Men 200, where you've got Magneto in the trial and he's got his first part of the season, his outfit, or if you want to get the the newer comics, like the one where he gets the adamantium ripped out of him, ask Larry if he's got them in stock. Pop out to Bugs Comics and Games on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. You can easily get it from Highway 70 or from Highway 364. Go to the website to check out his hours. And, of course, give their Facebook page like facebook.com/Bugs Comics and Games. If all this talk that Matthew and I are doing about Magneto is kind of, well, I haven't read X-Men for a while. I want to get back into it. Whether it's the, one of the newer runs or if you want to go back into the older stuff, Larry's got a great selection, because I always say it's not a comic book store if they don't have back issues. And Larry's got boxes and boxes and boxes. Plus, join the Avengers Club. If you want to save money on your comic books, you can join the Avengers Club. You start saving money on your new issues, your back issues, your toys, your games, your bags, your boards, whatever it might be. That way you can enjoy your hobby and ease your conscience a little bit, because you've saved some money doing so. Make sure you start your weekly pull list. That way, if you don't, X-Men and Wolverine are flying off the shelves now, especially with the new series. You might want to get those in advance, have him add those to your pull list. That way you don't miss an issue. He'll automatically pull it off the shelf before the Wednesday store opens on New Comic Book Day, and that way you've got your copy secured and you don't have to worry about it. Bugs Comics and Games on Instagram as well. If you're outside the greater St. Louis area, like our friend Chance in Atlanta, you can go on there and see if there's one of the comics you like. Say, hey, I want to claim this. He'll send you a PayPal invoice and then ship it straight to your door. No fuss, no muss. And that way you don't have to, maybe your local comic book store has gone out of business, and Larry can be your local comic book store from far away. Bugs Comics and Games, very proud to have them as our official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. As we wrap up the hour here, it always blows by when I've got someone like you on, Matthew, because I feel like there's 1,000 things I want to talk about, and it's just not enough time. I want to make sure we talk about the conventions, because I know some of your X-Men brethren will be at, I think, Phoenix Fan Fusion. I saw George was going to be there. Lenore was going to be there. A couple of, I think Allison will be there. And
I think so, yeah.
And they're splitting a lot of you up. I think you've got some upcoming conventions elsewhere, though, too, right?
Yes. So in 2 weeks, I think it's like the 1st and 2nd of June, I'm going to be in Nashville, and Ross Marcon is also going to be there, who's Xavier, of course. And then in July, I'm going to be near you. We're going to be at Animate Columbus July. I think it's like 19th to the 21st. And I know that Ray Chase, who's Cyclops, and AJ Lacazio, who is Gambit, and I are going to be there for Animate Columbus. So if you're in the area and you're free, come on by and say hello. Tell us the things that you like. Tell us the things that you don't like about the show. Either way, we'll be happy to see you.
You've done several of these Comic Cons now. How are the panels? Are they pretty like standing room only for these panels that you guys are doing?
They're great. I mean, they're pretty full, which is great. And the difficult thing is like the cost of the show is big, and so like a lot of these conventions, like there's good, like the one that we were at today, there were 6 of us, I think, and also the Lewolds were there and Larry Houston was there. So the sort of talking takes a while, and it means that like you don't get as much time for the people who are there to ask questions, so there's fewer questions. But it's nice because there's, you know, they get a whole bunch of us, and so there's a lot of stories and things to tell. So the panels are great. The panels are a lot of fun because you kind of get to talk and reminisce and go over like about the things, and we also kind of get to find out, like, you hear Lenora tell about when she first got the job, and you hear Ross and Guy and Isaac and so sort of talk about like when they got the job and how that felt and what happened, and the people who were like obsessed with X-Men and who, you know, terrified their dog because they were at home when they got it and they couldn't tell anyone else, so they just ran around screaming and their dogs were freaking out, going, "What is happening? Why are you yelling?" So it's like getting to hear those sort of stories are great.
And Zachary Nathanson's joined us in the chat, says hello to everybody, and hello, Matthew. It's such a fascinating thing because, like I said, the fact that this show, where, you know, there's lots of shows out there that were great in the 90s and the 2000s that didn't get this, I don't want to say comeback, but you've lost a couple of the main characters from the original, but I feel like everyone is so accepting, and they love the voice, like Ray, for example. They love what he's done with Cyclops and Ross coming back. And then you've got the people like Jennifer Hale, who are new to coming in as Jean Grey, new to the series. But then you've got the old guard like George, like Lenore, and everything like that. And it's such a great mix. And it's so sad that you guys didn't get to do, you know, a big studio recording so you could have that interaction. But I would never known if I didn't get that answer from you that you guys weren't all in the booth together, because it's really well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been great that they've managed to bring everybody back, and everybody is, you know, if they're either playing their roles, or if for whatever reason they've switched out of it to something, they found something that wasn't just like another good role, but something that actually made sense for them to be playing, like for that actor to be playing. And people have been so kind and generous with those of us who are taking over roles, of, you know, giving us the grace of okay, well, let's see how you actually sound. Let's see what it actually is. Because it's very easy to say, especially for something that's 30 years old that means so much to people and was such a part of people's childhood, to say, no, I like it the way I like it. Why are we changing things? But people have been lovely about it. And look, it helps that, you know, what Ray has done with Cyclops is mind blowing. Like, Cyclops is so awesome in this show in a way that, you know, for all the people who loved him, who always kind of felt like, he's getting kind of a short shrift. He's done such a great job. And it's a hard character. It's kind of like Superman or Captain America, it's very easy for it to be sort of very staid, uninteresting character, because he's so earnest and so upright. And so, you know, and so to find a way to make that, to take what is actually awesome about that guy and make sure that you show that while not betraying who the character is, takes a lot of skill. And so it would, like, getting to see what Ray had done and what the writers had done with him has just been a blast, because he's so good. And the character is so much fun in this show.
Yeah, see, Gail Simone, if you're listening, people do love Cyclops, no matter what anyone else says, in case you're listening, Gail. Zachary Nathanson says, it was great to hear Ace of Base and Shel Woolley in the X-Men 97. Crossing my fingers for Lenny Kravitz. Are you going to go my way in Radiohead's Planet Telex in the next season? I mean, just like I said, this show is fired on all cylinders, to Zachary's point. It's been such a great blast to watch. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I'm curious. I should have asked this at the very beginning. Getting the part, I know you did a What If thing for Disney Plus for their What If. You did a voice in that series, and way back you voiced Nightmare in a Hulk, one of those direct movies. What was it? Did they know you and ask you to come into audition? Was it something that you just wanted to go out for? What was the process of getting the part?
This was a straight audition. This was, when they were first starting to work on it, they put packets together for all the cast, because they didn't know who in the original cast was willing, who was available, who still sounded like they needed to sound. So they sent out packets for pretty much everything. And we got a packet that had all these characters, and it was all under different names. And each character had a file that had like 3 or 4 clips from the original show for voice reference. And they said, listen through this and see what you fit, and, you know, send auditions in. So I listened through it, and I got to the Magneto one and listened, and I thought, I can, that falls pretty safely in my wheelhouse. So did that, and then sent it off. And at the same time, Jake Castorena, who's the supervising director on it, he knew my wife Rachel because he had done Justice League Action with them, and he had sort of messaged her. I can say this now because all the where it's out. Like at the time, I don't think he was supposed to, but he messaged her and said, "Hey, if you get something for this project," and I don't remember what the working title was, he said, "Pay attention to it. It's mine. It's a good one." So we knew what it was. And then I got a phone call that they were interested, and what they wanted to do was to record, have like a test session. So record an episode to then listen to and see how working together was, see how directing was, and they would then have a little bit to put into some things and to mix with people to do. So we did about an hour session where I was just here in my booth, like we eventually did for the show. And at one point in it, we took a 5-minute break, and I went out to go back to the house to go and grab a drink or something. And my wife, Rachel, was in there, and she said, "Jake just texted that it's going really well." And I said, "Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. I just don't." Okay. So I sort of came back in here and put myself in the booth, and I had to sort of shake it out of my head and go, "Okay, just keep doing what you're doing and hope it continues to go well." But it was sweet. Jake was sort of saying, "Hey, it's going well. People are liking what he's doing, and it's working for everybody." And I'm like, "Great. Now just don't suddenly get weird about it because you know that and change it and screw the whole thing up." But we finished that, and then not that much later, only a few weeks later, I think I got a message from my agent saying, "Hey, you're going to get to be Magneto."
Wow.
Which was great. And that was one of the nice things of like my wife and like I actually had somebody I could talk to about it, because you're all under N.D.A, because she was under the same NDAs, but someone who I could talk to about it who knew exactly what it was. And so I actually had somebody I could share the story with.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing to think. I mean, like I said, it's probably one of the biggest, for Marvel anyway, one of their biggest franchises, because that original series is so beloved by people like me. And then the new one, I'm seeing all sorts of, it's satisfying the old fans, and it's bringing in a bunch of new people, which, like I said earlier, that's a rare thing. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know you just got in from this convention, so I want to let you go a little early. People, if they want to keep up with you, website, social media handles, things like that.
Yes, so I think all my social media, I'm not great at social media, but I'm trying to get better at it. But my social media is both Instagram and Twitter are both MJ Waterson, at MJ Waterson. And then the website, which I'm also getting better at updating for conventions or appearances or stuff like that, is just matthewwaterson.com.
Perfect. And if you're listening after the fact in the show notes, scroll down to the bottom of the page. We'll have links to Matthew's socials and his website there, so you can click on those and keep up with him. I so appreciate your time, especially coming in right off a convention. I had no idea that was happening, but I sincerely appreciate you jumping on air with us.
No, that's fine. Originally, I was only going to be there yesterday, and then some stuff shifted, so I stayed today. And then it was a case of like, okay, I want to make sure I get out early, because I thought worst case scenario, I can phone in from the car, but that's not ideal. So hopefully, and it worked. Like I said, I sort of pulled into the garage at sort of 6:55 and said, okay, I can get in, I can turn the computer on, and I can be ready. So that's great. So I was glad it all worked out, and yeah, it's been lovely to talk with you.
You too, and like I said, if you're up for it, we'll have to have you back once season 2 drops.
I'd love that. That'd be great. This is a project that I'm always going to enjoy talking about.
I can only imagine, because my gosh, we've loved watching it, as you can tell by the chats too tonight. So Matthew Waterson, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.
You too. There he goes. It's like I said, it's amazing to watch this series. And for those of you who've been listening, hopefully you've watched. Hopefully we didn't spoil too much for you. But it's been so cool to see this project just take off and the universal love it's gotten. It kind of gives me hope for our projects that maybe the fandom will take a lesson from this and not be divided going forward. We're wrapping up the show. We just have about 4 minutes left before we wrap everything up and sign off here. Chance wanted to know, he wanted to ask about Fall Guy and the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes reviews, if we have time. We got a few minutes left. Joey, did you get to see either one of those?
Yeah, I saw Fall Guy.
Okay, so we can do Fall Guy then for Chance. I know I saw some of what Chance was talking about. One of his podcasts, he saw it, and I think, if I remember correctly, Chance, you said you liked it. What were your initial thoughts on it?
It was a lot of fun, but I didn't go in with any expectations. I didn't see the trailers. So the whole side story of him being on this find the missing actor goose chase thing kind of threw me off. It felt like it was very TV sitcom-y. And then I remembered, oh, this was a TV show back then. These were kind of the plot points that were probably in that show back then. I wanted to see more of the backstory or the behind the scenes of the Hollywood industry of a stuntman. So when it went on this other side quest, I Took a little bit of time to get used to it, but it was funny the whole time. I did enjoy it. The Kiss song that they kept playing over and over was a little grating. And then that, 6-foot tall woman from Ted Lasso, her character was a little annoying, but I think she was based on maybe a real person that Tom Cruise works with. So, the more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed it. But in the moment, I thought these are weird choices. I don't know if you loved it and you watched. Did you watch? So I know it was in the 80s with Lee Majors.
Yes, I'm very old. So yes, I did enjoy the original series with Lee Majors, and Jodie was played by Heather Thomas, I believe. There was Heather Thomas and Heather Locklear in the 80s. Heather Locklear was on TJ Hooker. But I liked the series, and it was kind of, to your point about the side quest, he was a stuntman, but the series was all about, he was also on the side gig, he was a bounty hunter. So Marky Post from Night Court fandom, Marky Post played a character, and she would come with his assignments. Hey, this guy skipped out on his bail. So Colt and Howie, his sidekick, would go after the bad guy and try to bring him in. Sometimes the bad guy was one of those, he's jumped bail for a legitimate reason. Sometimes he was just an outright bad guy, and sitcom hijinks ensued. So I think the movie stayed true to that aspect of the series, but it also didn't really get into a lot of that. This was just, he's a stuntman, and I would kind of like to see one where, yes, he is a bounty hunter, and have it kind of a little bit more aspect of that exploration be taken. But overall, it was very fun. I'm glad that Lee Majors got his cameo at the end there. I was kind of waiting for him to pop up the whole time. But the little Easter eggs, like that brown truck that Colt drove, that was the truck from the original TV series. Probably not the same truck, but that was what he drove then. They played the theme song to the show at the ending credits. But yes, that song that kept playing, I walked out of there humming that for the next 2 days. I could not get that song out of my head. So that was a little great.
Disco song. I was made for loving you, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did different versions of that. I think they opened up a music box and a ballerina dance to it. There was like 5 different versions of that. But if you like those main characters, Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, their chemistry is just magnetic. They're so good together.
They were.
If you watch the trailer, it's actually full of scenes that aren't even in the movie. So they must have been having fun on set ad-libbing to have all that extra content to put in the trailer.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. And as far as we just have like a minute left here, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I loved. I thought it was really good. The CGI has just taken such leaps ahead in the past even 5 years. What was the last one released, like 8 years ago?
Something like this is the 10th film in the series. And there was a TV show as well.
Yeah, but the CGI was fantastic in this one. I loved it. We saw it at the B&B over there on West Olive. Used to be an AMC, and they had that surrounding 360, whatever they call it, view.
Yeah, at certain scenes, they have screens on the side that'll pop up, and it's almost like you're being enveloped by the whole action of the movie. I don't know if these films that are projected on those are made for that. It's kind of like they stretch out the sides. It's really good if it's a jungle scene, I assume.
Oh, yeah, they had the overhead drone shot of when they're kind of climbing up to the summit. If you've seen the movie, you'll know I'm not giving anything away there either. But yes, Chance says the movie Fall Guy was enjoyable, had a little to do with the original source material, and he did agree about the song with you.
It'd be interesting to find out how much they spent. I think they did a lot of reshoots on Fall Guy. If it costs $150 million, that's insane. That's some number that I've heard, because it's more of a smaller kind of comedy.
Yeah.
For it to cost that much, I don't know if it's going to pan out for them. It's not a bomb, but it didn't make as much money as Planet of the Apes was a big surprise to people, it seemed, for this fourth and this little reboot. For it to make that much money, I think it's made like $200 million worldwide so far.
Yeah, so that sounds about right.
Good on that.
Yeah. So Chance, we were able to get him in. Hopefully that answers your questions about what we thought of the Fall Guy
Love
and
you, Chance.
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Thank you to Joey V. Happy early birthday to Joey V. Too. It's your birthday next week, so happy birthday. Thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to Emily and
It's not in the way you watch a zombie.
I'm losing track of where I am in the chats now. Zachary
It's not
Nathanson.
in the way
thank you,
you
Chance,
watch
and
the
Mike
Flash.
Black, and all of you who chimed in. Bill Blanky.
It's not in the
next
way
week,
you
we have
love
another live
Scotty
show, so
Young
tune in next
Arts.
week as well. Make sure you follow us
It's
on
not
Twitter
in the
at
way
Geek to Me
you
Radio,
play
Instagram at Geek to Me Radio,
Mario
and YouTube.com/.
It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references.
We do a live show. Thank you to Joey for coming in, streaming the video. We always appreciate that. And until next week, my friends.
That's a show.